There are moments in life when reality feels too precise to be accidental, as if invisible hands have arranged every encounter with unsettling accuracy. And in those moments, the mind begins to question whether destiny is merely a poetic illusion or something far more intimate and deliberate. Deep within the unconscious, beyond logic and beyond the structures of daily thought, there exists a quiet force that shapes attraction, connection, and longing, a force that does not ask for permission but instead orchestrates alignment between two lives that appear separate on the surface, yet are deeply intertwined beneath. You may believe that you chose this person, that your feelings emerge naturally. But what if the truth unsettles that belief? What if somewhere in a space untouched by time and untouched by doubt, another soul called out with sincerity so intense that it echoed into existence, shaping circumstances, influencing paths, and slowly guiding both of you toward a meeting that now feels inevitable? Prayer, in its truest sense, is not confined to spoken language or ritualistic gestures. It is the purest expression of inner desire, a projection of the psyche reaching beyond itself. And when such a projection carries emotional intensity, it begins to reorganize reality in subtle but undeniable ways. What shocks the conscious mind is not the idea that someone prayed for you, but the realization that you were already becoming the answer long before you understood the question, that your growth, your struggles, your transformations were not random, but part of a deeper preparation. This connection you feel is not simply about romance or companionship, it is a mirror placed before you, reflecting aspects of yourself that remained hidden, waiting to be discovered through another, and in that reflection lies both discomfort and profound meaning. The soul does not seek comfort alone, it seeks wholeness, and sometimes it chooses another person as the vessel through which that wholeness can emerge, even if the process feels overwhelming or confusing. What you are experiencing is not just attraction, it is recognition, not of the other as separate, but of something familiar, something ancient, something that feels as though it has always existed within you. And when you begin to understand this, when you begin to see that what appears external is deeply internal, the shock transforms into awareness, and awareness transforms into responsibility, because now you are no longer passive in this connection, you are a participant in a process that demands growth, honesty, and courage. The question is no longer whether this was meant to happen. The question becomes whether you are willing to face what this connection reveals about who you are becoming long before the mind can name a feeling or assign meaning to an encounter. Something far deeper has already begun its quiet work beneath the surface of awareness, where the unconscious moves without language, yet with undeniable direction, shaping inclinations, drawing attention, and subtly guiding one life toward another without the interference of logic or deliberate choice. In this hidden realm, the psyche does not operate through linear time or rational planning, but through patterns, symbols, and archetypal currents that weave individuals together in ways that defy ordinary explanation, creating a sense of familiarity that cannot be traced to any visible origin, as though two paths were designed to converge long before either traveler understood the journey. What appears to the conscious mind as coincidence is often the culmination of countless unseen processes, where desires unspoken and emotions not yet realized begin to resonate with a corresponding frequency in another, forming a silent dialogue between two inner worlds that have not yet met in physical reality. This binding does not require awareness to exist, nor does it depend on intention as it is commonly understood, because the unconscious carries its own form of intelligence, one that recognizes what is necessary for growth and seeks alignment with what complements or challenges the individual in meaningful ways. As a result, the attraction that eventually emerges is not merely a reaction to external traits or circumstances, but a recognition of something deeply internal, something that has been forming and evolving within both individuals long before their conscious selves become aware of its presence. There is often a strange sense of inevitability in such connections, a feeling that the meeting could not have been avoided, that every decision, every delay, and every unexpected turn was somehow guiding both lives toward a shared moment that feels both new and ancient at the same time. The unconscious does not rush this process, nor does it reveal its intentions prematurely. instead allowing each individual to undergo necessary experiences, to develop certain qualities, and to confront personal shadows, so that when the connection finally surfaces into awareness, it carries a depth that cannot be reduced to simple explanation. This is why such encounters often feel intense or transformative, because they are not isolated events, but the visible expression of a long and intricate inner preparation, one that has been unfolding quietly without recognition until the moment when it can no longer remain hidden. In recognizing this, one begins to understand that the connection itself is not something created in the present, but something revealed, something that has always existed beneath the threshold of awareness, waiting patiently for the conscious mind to catch up with what the unconscious has already set into motion. What is often called prayer is too easily reduced to spoken phrases or ritualized expressions. Yet beneath these outer forms lies something far more potent, a movement within the psyche where desire, longing, and intention begin to converge into a single directed force that does not merely ask but quietly reshapes the inner world from which all outer experiences arise. Within this inner space, longing is not passive or empty. It carries a kind of gravity, drawing thoughts, emotions, and even choices into alignment with what is deeply sought. And in doing so, it begins to organize the individual from within, creating coherence where there may have been fragmentation and direction where there was once uncertainty. Desire, when it reaches a certain depth, ceases to be superficial or fleeting and instead becomes a guiding principle, a signal emerging from layers of the psyche that recognize what is necessary for growth. And as this signal strengthens, it begins to influence perception, subtly altering what one notices, what one values, and how one responds to the unfolding of life. In this way, what appears to be a simple wish or hope is in fact a process of internal ordering, where scattered impulses are gradually brought into harmony, allowing the individual to move with greater clarity and purpose, even without conscious awareness of the forces at work. There is a silent transformation that occurs when longing is sustained, a shift from restless wanting to focused intention, where the energy of desire no longer disperses itself in conflicting directions, but instead gathers into a concentrated presence that shapes both thought and behavior in ways that feel natural yet are deeply significant. This alignment does not impose itself violently or demand immediate results. It works patiently, influencing the inner structure of the individual so that actions begin to reflect what is truly desired, often without the need for conscious effort or deliberate planning. What is perceived externally as chance or opportunity may, in fact, be the outward expression of this inner coherence, where circumstances seem to respond to a state that has already been established within, creating a sense that life is unfolding with a certain precision that cannot be easily explained through logic alone. The deeper implication is that what one seeks is not separate from what one becomes, that the act of longing, when it is genuine and sustained, participates in shaping the very conditions through which it may be fulfilled, not through control, but through alignment with something more fundamental than conscious intention. In recognizing this, the idea of prayer shifts from a request directed outward to a process that unfolds inwardly, where the individual is gradually brought into harmony with what is most essential, and in that harmony, the boundaries between desire, destiny, and becoming begin to dissolve into a single continuous movement. Idea of a soulmate does not arise randomly within the mind, nor is it merely a product of cultural stories or passing fantasies. It emerges from a much deeper layer of the psyche where archetypal patterns reside, shaping the way individuals imagine connection, intimacy, and completion without requiring conscious effort or deliberate construction. Within this deeper realm, the psyche carries inherited forms, symbolic templates that influence perception and expectation, and among these forms is the image of a counterpart, a figure that seems to embody what is missing, what is desired, and what feels profoundly familiar despite never having been encountered in tangible reality. This image does not present itself clearly or consistently. Instead, it appears through fragments, through emotional responses, through inexplicable attractions and recurring fantasies, gradually forming a presence that feels both internal and external at once, as though it belongs to the self while also pointing toward another. The power of this archetypal image lies in its ability to organize experience, to shape how one interprets encounters and assigns meaning to relationships, often guiding attention toward individuals who resonate with these unconscious patterns, even if the conscious mind cannot immediately explain why. At times, this can create a sense of inevitability, where meeting someone feels less like a new beginning and more like a recognition of something that has always existed in potential form, something that has been quietly influencing perception and desire long before any real interaction took place. Yet this image is not a literal blueprint of another person. It is a symbolic representation of inner qualities seeking expression and integration, and when projected onto another individual, it can create a powerful illusion of completeness, as though the other person holds the missing parts of one's own being. This projection is not an error in itself, but a natural function of the psyche, a way of bringing unconscious material into awareness through relationship, allowing aspects of the self that were previously hidden to become visible and experienced in a tangible form. The intensity that often accompanies such connections is not solely about the other person, but about the activation of these deep patterns, which carry emotional weight accumulated over time, giving the impression that the connection is extraordinary or even destined. However, what is being encountered is not just the other individual, but the reflection of an inner structure, a meeting between external reality and internal imagery that creates a sense of depth and significance far beyond ordinary interaction. In becoming aware of this process, one begins to see that the image of the soulmate is less about finding someone who completes the self and more about encountering a mirror that reveals what has yet to be integrated, what has been waiting beneath the surface of awareness to be recognized and brought into wholeness. What is commonly dismissed as coincidence often carries a deeper structure, one that does not reveal itself to the surface mind but operates quietly beneath it, where patterns of thought, emotion, and unresolved tension begin to organize experience in ways that appear accidental yet feel strangely precise. The conscious mind prefers clear causes and visible chains of events, yet much of human life unfolds from layers that remain hidden, where inner needs, conflicts, and desires shape perception and behavior long before they become recognized, influencing choices in subtle ways that eventually lead to encounters or situations that seem unexpected. In this hidden movement, the psyche seeks balance and completion, not through abstract reasoning, but through lived experience, drawing the individual towards circumstances that reflect what has been ignored, suppressed, or left unresolved, creating moments that feel coincidental but carry a deeper sense of necessity. These moments often arrive without warning, disrupting ordinary expectations and introducing people or events that seem unrelated to prior intentions. Yet, upon reflection, they reveal a strange coherence, as though each step leading to them was quietly guided by something beyond conscious planning. What gives these experiences their intensity is not merely their occurrence, but the feeling that they matter, that they carry significance beyond what can be explained logically, suggesting that they are not random interruptions but expressions of an inner process seeking visibility. The psyche does not communicate directly through statements or clear instructions. It communicates through patterns, through repetition, through encounters that evoke strong reactions, and through situations that demand attention, gradually making visible what has been operating beneath awareness. In this way, what appears as chance may be the outer form of an inner demand, a necessity emerging from within that can no longer remain unexpressed, shaping reality in such a way that it becomes impossible to ignore. The recognition of this does not eliminate uncertainty, but it shifts the perspective, allowing one to see that life is not merely happening from the outside in, but also from the inside out, where inner structures influence outer events in ways that are subtle yet persistent. As awareness deepens, the line between coincidence and intention begins to blur, revealing a dynamic interplay between the inner world and external reality, where each reflects and informs the other in a continuous process that resists simple explanation. To perceive this is to move beyond the surface of events and into a deeper understanding of experience, where meaning is not imposed after the fact but is inherent within the unfolding itself, waiting to be recognized rather than explained. When two individuals come into close connection, It is rarely a simple merging of personalities or a convenient alignment of preferences. It reflects a far deeper movement within the psyche, where each person becomes a living catalyst for the other's unfolding, revealing layers of the self that would otherwise remain concealed beneath habitual patterns and familiar identities. This encounter is not defined by harmony alone, nor is it sustained by comfort, because its true function lies in disruption as much as in connection, bringing forward contradictions, tensions, and hidden aspects that challenge the existing sense of self and demand a more complete awareness. Within this dynamic, each individual serves as both mirror and provocation, reflecting qualities that are admired, feared, or denied, and in doing so, creates a space where the self can no longer remain fragmented without consequence, where avoidance becomes increasingly difficult and recognition becomes inevitable. The process that unfolds is not about losing oneself in another, but about encountering oneself through the presence of another, where every emotional reaction, every moment of attraction or resistance points towards something internal that seeks acknowledgement and integration. There is often a sense of intensity in such connections, a feeling that something significant is at stake beyond the surface of interaction, as though the relationship itself carries a purpose that extends beyond companionship and into transformation. This transformation does not occur through passive experience. It requires engagement, reflection, and a willingness to confront aspects of the self that may be uncomfortable or unfamiliar, allowing what was once hidden to emerge into awareness. As this process continues, the boundaries between self and other begin to shift, not in the sense of dissolving individuality, but in revealing how deeply interconnected inner and outer experiences are, where the qualities perceived in the other are often linked to undeveloped or unrecognized aspects within oneself. The relationship thus becomes a field of development, a space in which the individual is gradually shaped, not by external influence alone, but by the activation of inner potentials that require expression and integration in order to reach a more complete form. What emerges from this is not a perfected union, but a deeper understanding of the self, where identity is no longer confined to a fixed image, but becomes a dynamic process, continuously evolving through experience and awareness. In recognizing this, the connection is no longer seen as an end in itself, but as part of an ongoing movement toward wholeness, where each interaction contributes to a broader process of becoming that extends beyond the immediate relationship and into the unfolding of the individual as a whole. Being comes a moment when the search outward begins to lose its certainty, when the assumptions that guided desire start to loosen, and what once appeared to be located in another person, another place, or another future begins to reveal itself as something that has been quietly developing within all along. This realization does not arrive gently or with immediate clarity. It often carries a sense of disruption, as though the ground beneath familiar beliefs has shifted, exposing the fragile nature of what was once taken for granted, and in that exposure, a deeper truth begins to surface. The shock lies not in discovering something entirely new, but in recognizing something that was always present yet remained unnoticed, a structure of feeling, intention, and potential that has been forming beneath awareness, influencing perception and shaping experience without ever being fully acknowledged. What was once projected outward as a need or expectation begins to turn inward, revealing that the qualities attributed to another were in fact reflections of something incomplete or unrecognized within the self, waiting not to be found but to be realized. This shift alters the entire orientation of experience, where the focus moves from seeking fulfillment through external means to understanding the internal processes that give rise to that very sense of longing, uncovering layers of the psyche that had been concealed by the act of searching. There is often resistance in this moment, a reluctance to accept that what felt distant or unattainable is in fact intimately connected to one's own development, because this recognition brings with it a new form of responsibility, one that can no longer be avoided or transferred to external circumstances. The illusion of separation begins to dissolve, not completely, but enough to reveal a continuity between inner and outer life, where experiences are no longer seen as isolated events, but as expressions of an ongoing internal formation that seeks completion through awareness rather than acquisition. In this unfolding, the individual begins to perceive that what was once desired in another person was never entirely about that person, but about the activation of certain qualities, emotions, and potentials that now demand recognition and integration within the self. The intensity of this realization is what gives rise to the sense of shock, as it challenges the habitual way of understanding desire and fulfillment, replacing it with a more complex and less comfortable truth that requires deeper reflection and sustained attention. What emerges from this is not a loss of meaning, but a transformation of it, where the search itself becomes part of a larger process of self-realization. And what was once pursued externally is gradually understood as something that must be encountered, developed, and embodied from within.